What muscles do you need to be a really good long jumper or sprinter? This video was prompted by a question from regular contributor Helder Gonzales, who says he's done a lot of work on his hip flexors and extensors muscles to the front and rear of the upper thigh with a increase in muscle mass in those areas, and that he's saying that that has affected his jumping distance in that he's not jumping so well, and that he's perhaps now underdeveloped in the quadriceps, and he's asking me whether that can be the case and what do I suggest. Well, let's initially consider the hip flexors and extensors. As I say in my videos, those are the most crucial muscles, everything else being equal, for sprinting and jumping. They are the axle around which the legs spin. So the more power you have in your hip complex, the faster, everything else being equal, you will run, for example. If we just look specifically at the muscles to the front of the hip, then those are going to have a smaller cross-sectional mass compared to the thigh musculature. Now, there is a great deal of research which indicates that the more conditioned appropriately for sprinting and jumping your hip flexors are and hip extensors, then the faster you're going to be able to run, as I've said, and also the larger those muscles will be. There is a well-known piece of research video on YouTube which compares the musculature in the hip region of Asafa Powell with, I think, a top Japanese sprinter, and there is a huge difference between the power producing muscles in Asafa's upper thighs compared to the Japanese sprinters. Now, if we're talking about imbalances between the front of the thigh and the rear of the thigh, there can be problems there in terms of potentiality for hamstring strain, in that the posterior chain muscles need to be sufficiently conditioned and specifically conditioned in order to provide sprint power without breaking down under load. And often quad dominant jumpers, or those that spend a lot of time working on their anterior chain muscles, can have an imbalance which affects their hamstrings. Now, as I'm saying as well, the hip flexors and extensors are crucial for sprinting. Therefore, you need to work on the front and back of your thighs and the top region of your thighs in particular. And everything else being equal, and saying that again, your posterior chain and hip flexors are the most important. Now, we all respond to weight training, for example, differently in terms of hormonal response, and indeed other forms of training. High power, high intensity weight training, sprinting, plyometrics produces androgens, growth hormone and testosterone, and those are a cocktail for increasing muscle mass in many people. However, the protocols that you use in the gym, for example, in terms of weights, can have a bearing as to how much of these stimulating androgen hormones are produced. Lower rep weight training, heavy weight training at that, so 4x4 with a very heavy weight in excess of 90% of 1 rep maximum, will have less of an androgen response than, for example, 5x8 reps at 75%, for example. Therefore, you can somewhat control to a degree the response to your weight training and muscle mass gain by looking at the protocols which you use. Eccentric weight training also will have less of a stimulatory response in terms of increasing muscle size. However, as I said, we all respond to weight training differently. Some of us will be quick gainers in muscle size, others won't, and much of that depends on our somatotype, our body shape, our type, whether we are ectomorph, mesomorph or endomorphic, and the proportions of each of those body types that each one of us has. Most long jumpers will be mesomorphic, potentially on the ectomorphic mesomorphic continuum, in that they won't be massive in terms of upper bodies, they will be long and lean. There aren't too many well muscled in terms of more squatter shape long jumpers around. Jeff Henderson perhaps being one of the few that I can remember. Most male long jumpers are over 6 foot tall and around 80 to 90 kilograms in weight. Now, it is important to remember that from my perspective when training, weight training is more peripheral to your plyometric and your sprint training from a conditioning point of view. Yes, plyometrics will increase muscle size and so will sprinting, but not quite to the same extent as weight training. So you can moderate your muscle mass gains by emphasizing more sprint and plyometric training as opposed to weight training. really what we're after when it comes to developing the right muscles for sprinting, regardless of size, is the ability for them to produce force more quickly and in the specific movement patterns required of sprinting and jumping. Therefore, the increases in muscular changes, shall we say, may well be in terms of the rate of discharge of the muscle and the connecting soft tissue tendons and ligaments, and the neural transference, the pathway between the brain and the muscles, and the firing of those muscles and muscle fibers. That should be your aim of your sprint and long jump training, to be able to create more power. The size of the muscle becomes slightly secondary to that, or I should say actually much more secondary to that. If you can produce more power on each foot contact and on your takeoff in the long jump, for example, without a too large increase in muscle mass, then you're going to create a winning situation. I'll finish up with a brief consideration of eccentric training. As in a recent post by the exercise scientist, biomechanist Chris Beardsley, he talked about eccentric training and how slow eccentric training was less relevant in terms of developing speed, power and muscle growth. He's indicating that it does not increase the rate of discharge of the type 2B fast twitch muscle fibers and their motor units. Rather, it focuses more on the slower twitch muscle fibers. Also, there's more information out there that talks about fast drop eccentric movements, where, for example, simply put, you may hold dumbbells at arm's length and really drop down into a squat position and then return. So you're going down at as fast as you can and then you're coming up as quickly as you can. So you're looking at the coupling time between the eccentric to concentric actions, and training exercises such as those eccentrically can be seen to be a more benefit to slow movement ones. Well, I hope the comments I've made in this slightly different type of video will help you better understand how you can train your muscles and how appropriate it is to gain muscle mass in certain regions, predominantly focusing on the lower body. Remember that it's rate of discharge, fast twitch motor unit recruitment that is key to improving your speed and power. Don't lose sight of that and make sure that your training targets that pathway. If you have any specific questions on the subject matter of this particular video, or indeed any of my others, then do leave a comment in the section below or through my other social media. Also, please like, subscribe and share, as it will all help the channel's growth. And good luck, of course, with any competitions you've got coming up and your training. And do consider helping me help you become a better athlete or coach by considering becoming a channel member. If you go to the channel's homepage on desktop and click on the join button, then you can see which offers are available. For as little as $1.99 a month, £1.99 a month, you can become a channel supporter and do just that. So please do head over to the channel's homepage and take a look. And if you're interested in finding out more about the free lap timing system, which is accurate to 1/1000th of a second, then again, get in contact at the email address below.